Okay, we have World War III potentially breaking out before Donald Trump gets into office. We have cities and counties that are still counting ballots, and most of those are going towards Democrats. So strange. And other big stories. To help me go through that, I have Jovan Hutton Pulitzer. Jovan, thank you for joining me again.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So last you and I spoke was on election night. You were worried about, was there going to be cheating and shenanigans? And it seems we at least got past the Donald Trump stuff. I want to talk later in the show about these cities and counties that continue to count. But my friends over at the Gateway Pundit broke a story that casually covered something from the New York Times. I want to read it out loud, and you tell me the part that jumps out, because it actually scared me that Biden and the White House would say such a thing. According to the New York Times, U.S. and European officials have discussed a range of options they believe will deter Russia from taking more Ukrainian territory, including providing Kiev with nuclear weapons. The outlet reports that Western officials believe the Kremlin will not significantly escalate the war before Donald Trump is sworn in as president in January. Any part of that jump out to you?
Well, the most significant thing is, I think if anything's going on with Russia, it's our government, our maladministration trying to push Russia into it. I don't believe it's organic. I don't believe anything happening in the Ukraine is organic. And I think they're doing a little bit of warmongering by saying that, well, maybe Putin won't do anything until Trump's in. It's always how they try to paint this Putin and Trump bad guy relationship, which I believe is crap. So it's traditional fear-mongering. I don't buy and have never bought into the Ukraine stuff, other than it's the largest single money laundering operation in the world. And I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, that's kind of what we've been dealing with, deep state and bad actors. I would not doubt that their current version of a peaceful transfer of power is dropping a war in our lap, saying, see, we told you so. If he got in, there'd be a war. I don't put them past it one bit.
Yeah. They, maybe there'll be peace here, but then they make chaos abroad so that Trump is forced to continue to give American taxpayer money, weapons, support. The line that jumped out to me in the New York Times was, including providing Kiev with nuclear weapons. What are they talking about? Why would we give Ukraine nuclear weapons after Putin has said, oh, you attack us, we'll attack you. And then they lower their doctrine on nuclear weapons. And now the New York Times releases that Biden and the White House are talking about giving Zelensky and Ukraine and Kiev a nuclear weapon.
Well, remember, it's kind of a backdoor into them officially being sanctioned in NATO too, which right now it's kind of squishy, squashy whether they are or not. I think it's a way they're trying to protect themselves. If they can back into it and say that we trust Ukraine to give them nukes, it's a way for them to roll them into the UN. It's a way for the UN to keep doing what it's doing. So I see it something as more nefarious on the money laundering side. Would they ever use it? I don't think they'd use it, because Russia would come in and wipe them off the face of the map, as they should if, in fact, anybody used a nuke. Nobody should be using a nuke. But I think it is a way for them to try to legitimize the Ukraine. What would happen when Trump comes in? I think Trump knows that the Ukraine is just a money laundering operation. But imagine if they can swap a nuke, get a nuke in there before Trump's in, then President Trump has to deal with the puppet Zelensky as if he's real, when he never will be. So I can see that as a back way imprimatur to this is a real country that should be dealt with by Trump, which would kind of keep Trump hands off, which would kind of keep the politicians' money laundering racket going. That's how I take it.
Okay. Yeah, I read that and I thought, what on earth? We've given them $200 billion plus, all kinds of support, weapons, they're just losing people left and right. Over 1 million people killed, over 10 million.
Well, the question is, do you actually believe over 1 million people killed?
Well, based on the military people I have on my show, I think that number is reasonable. What number are you thinking?
I don't have a number on it. All I know is I don't believe it. And here's why I don't believe it. I can see military people saying it, but if you go into social media and you go into non-political, non-media areas, the people aren't talking about it. The people aren't lamenting of how their family members have been killed and there's dead bodies lying everywhere. So why is there a disconnect, especially if it's a million people? Something still has a wild disconnect for me, because I believe that if it was that significant of a loss, I believe many more people online would be chattering about it, publishing to social media about it, and we're just not seeing it. It's still very controlled, and when something's that controlled, it tells me it's an operation that's being played on us. And so I just don't buy the number yet. I don't have any empirical evidence that I can buy into.
Okay. What I have seen on social media is they show the capital, Kiev, and there's all these young university-age students, and they're out partying. They're at discotecas. They're at clubs.
That's right.
They do not seem at all concerned that hundreds of miles to the east, there's a massive battle going on with somebody worse than Adolf Hitler. So in that regard, I do see where you're coming from.
Well, if we live in the age of snowflakes, and we live in an age when these college kids have a flat tire, don't know how to change it, and start crying in the middle of the street, right? Just because they can't emotionally deal with it. If we were just to lay that American imprimatur over them and expect to see at least a marginal piece of that over there, I don't see it. I don't think they would be partying. I don't think they would be running around and doing what they're doing. And that's a lot of what I'm seeing. I'm still seeing the young people not being activists, but literally just partying like there's no tomorrow and having a good time. That is incongruent with a country, a small country at war, that's the breadbasket of the world. Supposedly their economy is cratered, and they're boxed in, and they're being cut off, and 1 million people have been killed. It's not reflecting in their people. I don't buy it.
Okay. On the flip side, over the weekend, I saw dozens of videos out of Montreal, Canada, where you have pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine street protesters burning buildings, shouting death to Canada, death to America, death to Israel, burn it all down. Mm-hmm. Lots of violent rhetoric and vandalism. Those people are upset.
Right.
Those people are protesting, yet over in Ukraine, hundreds of miles, not thousands of miles away, hundreds of miles away, they're at disco parties.
Well, let's just think of the difference here, because you actually pointed out what we should be looking at. These are either displaced people that were flown here, or how do they spontaneously show up and protest and all have printed signs and all have the flags and all have the same garb? That doesn't make sense. I think time and time again, we're shown that these protests are staged and paid for. Now, why are they happening in Canada and other countries? Because they're going to get on the media. And that's the purpose they serve. It is the drama, the psychological warfare they do on us. And you're right. If the kids at home who know what's going on the ground are less than 100 miles away from a massacre of 1 million people, they're not going to be partying, dressing up, going out, sitting on the streets, having great dinners and posting to social media. That's just not what would be happening.
Yeah. So just switching gears, these riots, these pro-Palestine riots that we saw in America, that we're seeing in England, Spain, Canada, it would be interesting. During the election, I kept seeing things on Twitter where it's like, oh, we're taking cell phone data for people that attend Kamala Harris events. And those same people are showing up event after event after event where with Trump, it was new batches of data, meaning new people.
Right.
And then you saw the busloads of people being brought into the Kamala Harris. I just wonder if a lot of these protesters aren't being paid to show up. Like you say, they show up all the same clothes, all the same color tents at Columbia University. I want to tell you guys about an amazing product called Kimchi One from Brightcore Nutrition. Kimchi One packs all the fermented nutrition of kimchi into convenient capsules. It completely cleans out your gut and improves digestion. It also gives me more energy and has boosted my immune system and all other areas of my health. I highly recommend this product because all health starts in the gut. So putting the right fermented superfood in your gut improves every aspect of your health, your skin, your hair, your mental performance, and you can do it the natural way. Today, you can get an exclusive offer for my viewers only. Buy 2 bottles of Kimchi One and get one absolutely free by clicking the link below. Or call my friends at Brightcore for up to 50% off your order and free shipping. They really go the extra mile and ensure you're taken care of when you call in. And you'll also get a free gift with your order. So give them a call now at 888-908-4425. Kimchi One is all natural. It's made in the USA, non-GMO, and this is a really great company. They are true patriots. They even donate a portion of their proceeds to the Wounded Warrior Project. So do something great for your health today and something great for your country. Give them a call right now at 888-908-4425. All right, let's get back to the interview.
I think it's no different than Patriot Front. And we see, and then all of a sudden, supposedly we're supposed to spontaneously see Nazis in Ohio and stuff, but their faces are covered. They have the same gear. Look, we have an economy that's been horrible on young people, complaining about they can't feed themselves, they can't pay for their cars, can't pay for their insurance, can't house themselves, but yet they're going to go out and drop $300 or $400 or $500 on common gear so they can fit in and go to a march. No, I don't buy it whatsoever. We're being played, and it is orchestrated, paid actors that are doing it. And when you put these things together, just like you said about the tents, when you look at those tents that they were doing in the parks and you realize that most of the stores didn't even order that many, right? These were bulk orders of tents and handed out once people got there. We're all being played. I think that's why we're on the opposite side of this stuff right now. It's just like everybody talking about President Trump's appointments and nomination, and it's all these horrible word folk. But yet when you look at who they nominated and who they put out and dudes in drag claiming they're military, it is all an orchestrated con game. But we're actually breaking free because media are realizing that our government is the media, or media is the government. They're equal arms of each other, ones to enforce, and that's where the payoff has been. But I think we're getting to the other side of it. I'm not sure it's going to be able to be effective much longer.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw this, but MSNBC's numbers are cratering. Their ad revenue is following that same downward trend. CNN is really struggling. And then over the weekend, the head of Axios News came out and threw this baby fit on stage about, being mad at Elon Musk for saying independent journalism is the future. He's like, they're not journalists. We're journalists, and he loses his mind on camera. Do you just see the trend going forward that more and more of these behemoth publicly traded news corporations that are in bed with the CIA and the US government, they just start falling apart without the government propping them up?
I think we're seeing an organic deregulation going on. It's happening because people are waking up. Now, don't think that only CIA has been in bed with media. Yes, that's true. We have the same problem on the conservative side now. I took great issue with the GOP saying, bank your ballot, which is early vote and mail-in voting. That was paid for too when you heard people out there pushing it and punting it. Will we get a reprieve to some extent? Yes, we will. Will traditional media go away? Yes, we will. But if we go back to this fact-checking fiasco that we got introduced in 2020, some of those organizations that were, quote unquote, propped up as fact checkers, I think they're going to emerge as new independent news organizations. All that we're going to see is a rebranding. And we're going to be in the same trap again if we don't keep our eyes open. And that means to inspect what we expect. We're going to have to bridge this gap between news readers. I don't think people are interested in news readers anymore. And people that, yes, it's political commentary. And yes, it's opinion, but it's opinion that's based on facts and pretty good empirical evidence. I think if that holds and people stay at a high standard of demanding facts, don't work on rumor, right? Don't work on innuendo. Don't be alarmist and just inspect what you expect. I think we'll all come out better, but I don't think it's going to be for long. They're going to figure out how to roll it up once again. And there's always the hammer of the cable TV box. They use that hammer against OAN and Newsmax to get them off, to get them to capitulate, to change their voice, to get back on. They're just going to swing the money in different ways. I think what we're going to need to see is what happens with the protection of the 230 and with Elon coming out, truly being news, not censoring people and letting people speak. If people do their own homework, they will realize that is free speech. And in free speech, here's the bottom line. If they want to stomp on the American flag, no matter how much it's distasteful, they have the right to stomp on the American flag. If you don't want them saying your kid's transgender, you can't demand they're Christian either. You have to work together, talk together, and lead people to find common ground. And so even on the right, you have to be very careful what you wish for, because many times the right ends up becoming just as stringent as the left is saying, you can't say that, you can't think that. And why all of this works is because all of it's in the mix of free speech.
Okay. Well, that's interesting.
Well, look, there's no good without evil.
Yeah.
Think about it for a moment. There's no good without evil. Empirically, God has taught us that. If everybody was good and everything was good, there would never be the evolution. And when I say evolution, I'm not talking like dinosaur, amoebas to people kind of stuff. I'm talking about just getting better in any way, academically, science, or whatever. You have to have both sides. Both sides is the measure. Both sides, you have the righteous side or the good side. You got to have that which you can measure against. It's just like doing an audit of an election. If you've never audited backwards to see what happened, you don't know what happened here because you can't go back and look at that. We have to have both sides. If you don't have both sides, you don't have a measurement stick to measure whether you're living up to your potential, whether you're doing what you need to do, whether you're pushing yourself as hard as you need to push yourself. And so in many ways, the blessing is we have both sides. I think without both sides, that's even more dangerous than communism if we all become the same thing. I think that's really, truly where we would cease to exist.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to have good and evil. You don't even recognize good if you don't have evil to compare.
That's right.
Yeah. That's a good point. You brought up Elon Musk. He pointed something out. He's going to be the head of Doge. He said it's been exposed that the United Nations is using money from the U.S. government to give close to $1.6 billion in debit cards to migrants so that they will move to the United States.
Right.
Why do you think the United Nations is actively trying to flood the United States with illegal immigrants? And why is our government giving billions and billions of dollars to NGOs? And then lastly, is part of Trump's border security plan to cut off government money to these funding mechanisms?
Well, the first time I covered on my program about the UN funding cards was about 4 years ago. This has been known for a very long time. It's just nobody's doing anything about it. If you look at the UN, the very countries that will throw somebody off a roof because they're gay, or not let a person go to university because they're female, ends up leading the human rights groups at the UN. It's all a racket. It's been around before. It's another one of these ways to extract money and control out of the system and think you should be all under one governing body and all kind of be the same pasteurized milk. And therefore, yes, we should take a look at this and we should cut off this money. And I'll give you an example. I sit here as a Jew and I realize that our country still gives money and it ultimately ends up going to Hamas, who still pays a bounty that if you kill a Jew, you're going to get paid for the rest of your life. Most people don't understand that. You go to a country over there in the Gaza Strip, they're going to say we have our own country and maybe their average annual income might be about $600. Well, they can get up to $1,000 a month if they'll kill Jews for the rest of their lives. So, and we pay for this. We still pay for this. We still pay for these bounties and stuff because we don't look deep enough. Everything comes back to us. It comes back to, do we really know what goes on? And do we really inspect what we expect? And so, yes, they'll play their sad violins and put out their little offering trays and let's take care of the Palestinian people and they're being displaced. Well, there's a reason that other countries right around them, Jordan, et cetera, won't take them. It's because they're put there to agitate, and it's very profitable. You get money if you whine and complain and agitate, and they've always used people to do it. Think about this. When in fact you put kids to protest for Hamas or Palestine and it gets media, all it does is allow them to raise more money. That's the racket. It's all driven. Raise more money, raise more money, raise more money. And by the way, ironically, the UN is a very, very big part of that.
Yeah. Well, I covered that the U.S. gave the UN money. The UN then sent metal piping so that Hamas could fix the water for their citizens in Gaza. And then those pipes were used to make rockets to attack Israel.
I have direct experience with the UN just before President Trump came in. And a lot of my work is in the medical field. And it's basically called nanoanalytics, looking at something at the microscopic level to understand before something becomes a disease state. Well, one of the things that we were able to develop, because there are more mobile phones around the world than there are running toilets, right? This is ubiquitous. And so I developed basically 80% of the reasons that you would take your kids to the doctor to get medical tests, that we could do them all on the mobile phone. Because that way, in a third world country, if at least one person had a phone, then we've got a clinic and we can get them medical care. Well, in this UN operation for Africa, they were trying to upgrade the quality of the agriculture. And one way to do that is to know the soil, right? Know what soil you have, know what amendments you need to do the soil. So the UN appropriated millions and oodles of millions of dollars to basically send a team to go across Africa to scoop up little bags of dirt and to send it into a testing plant, to have it tested to say, these are the soil amendments you need of why your crops aren't growing. That ran for years. Never moved the needle. Never improved crops. Never helped people grow more food and take care of themselves. And finally, somebody starts looking at it. And we dive into the data and say, what the hell is going on here? Well, the UN gave the contract to a buddy company. That buddy company, yes, was in fact in Africa. Yes, they went out and collected tens of thousands of soil samples from the same bar ditch 1/2 mile down the road. Labeled it as other countries, sent it back in, and everybody's soil was the same and everybody got the same advice. And therefore, nothing in their lands grew. Why? Because they were stealing the money. How'd they steal the money? They went down the road to the ditch, dug the soil sample, and said, hey, this came from this little remote village in Africa, wiped out everything. That's a prime example of how the UN operates, how the government operates, how this war machine operates that we're still under. And that's the big problem. People see big government deals and big riches. Nobody delivers. And that goes back to your Elon point. Get somebody in there when he could get rid of 70% of Twitter and never miss a beat and have his earnings go through the roof and have his company get bigger. That's the right type of person to understand, where do we get rid of the waste? Now, why is everybody screaming? Because in their minds, it's not waste. That 80% that's going to get cut is what's been going to their pockets.
Yes. So after Trump won, there's been a lot of angry, scared Democrats. I read just this morning, 70% of Democrats fear for their life under Trump, which I'm like, why? That it makes no sense other than being brainwashed into thinking he's Hitler, even though he wasn't Hitler when he was president.
Right.
But there are a few people that I've seen on the Democrat side. For example, Cenk Uygur, I think his name is, from the Young Turks. He said, hey, listen, let's look for the positive in this of the Trump administration. At least we got Elon that's going to clean up the government. Don't be mad about cleaning up the government. Does it give you any hope that Vivek and Elon Musk and Marjorie Taylor Greene and others are going to put together a group that will start digging in department by department to clean up the waste?
When I very first got introduced to Vivek, long before he announced that he even wanted to run for president, my connection with him was he was one of the very first people doing what I was doing, and that was calling out BlackRock, of how the money's actually laundered. And I'll give you an example here. Larry Fink from BlackRock controls all of these retirement accounts, goes into Walmart, tells Doug as CEO, you got to have a woman on your board. She's got to be black and she's got to have a penis and you got to swear she's a woman. And Fink and those guys basically saying, if you don't do it, we're just not going to include your stock in our retirement accounts. Well, that would be a shock to the world because they would just say, we're not going to have you in retirement accounts anymore, right? Well, the markets would go nuts because they would think Fink and those guys know something. That's how part of that extortion rat works on the corporate corruption side. One of the very first people to call that out was Vivek. Now, when you can see that and understand how that racket operates, then I believe you have the eyes to identify the patterns and the leaks to plug them. You can't go into an organization and think everything's fine. And you can't go into an organization only knowing traditional ways of accounting or looking. You've got to get alternative. You've got to get out there, and you really have to go way out of the box to see all the creative ways they steal money from our government. I think Elon, Vivek, etc. I think those people are uniquely qualified, and I'm really excited about it because long before it takes know-how, it takes bravery. And both of those individuals have a lot to lose. You have to understand, not only did they come out and speak about it, but they can be penalized to the billions. They can be brought up on SEC charges for stuff that's absolutely ridiculous. So they've actually hung themselves out on a post, which means they better deliver for the people so the people back them. And so I like that kind of measurement tool, and I actually think those guys are going to deliver.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's so weird that the government's first move when they need more money is to say we have to raise taxes. It's never to lower their bills. But in the real world, if you're having money problems, the first thing you do is you lower your bills and then you try to raise your income. Does the government not like to lower their bills because the government is financially incentivized to keep those bills high?
It's two things. It is, and I can give you a good technology example. When I was building Scan to Connect or Scan Commerce, which is why you can use your phone and zap a QR code or a barcode or anything, and it pops up on your phone. My CTO at the time, everybody says, wow, you got to be able to do this in instance, got to pull up on the phone. And my CTO decided that what we were doing was something a lot like banking. It had to be instantaneous. It had to deal with a massive amounts of transactions. And so what he recommended as a CTO at the time was that we're going to need 2 Hewlett-Packard Himalayans. Now, that was a big Kahoney machine. Only the big national banks ever deployed something like that. Now, this was something about a $10 million machine, a singular machine, right? A server. And so, of course, I'm trusting my CTO, and we do it. We dropped $20 million for 2 of these machines, only to find out, well, we never really needed it. And I was trying to think, where was the disconnect? What I didn't understand at that time that I do now is the disconnect was the measurement tool. Now let's look at him as a CTO. Great CTO, incredibly brilliant, came out of the university system. But how does a CTO get measured in the .com world? Bigger and bigger and bigger installations, bigger and bigger pieces of equipment. It's not going to be, I did that on the cheap. That's not how they're measured. They have to do something big, something that people have never done before. Now, I use that analogy because that's what happens in these government departments. They have to have bigger and better budgets for the people that run the departments to go to the next upper echelon. It's like moving up in a Fortune 500 company. You're not going to run a really small company and then all of a sudden run a $100 billion company. It's not the way it works. So you got to keep on pushing that envelope. So as they chew up their budgets, which they don't need, they get the budgets and they just find a way to spend it. And they're always hedging their bets. Therefore, the budget always grows, and becomes more and more wasteful. It is never about going back. So what has to happen is we have to change our measurement system. We've got to stop measuring people about, hey, you ran a department with 50,000 people in it and you had a budget of $1 billion. I would rather see new measurement sticks of, okay, we got a $1 billion department. We're going to get the same $1 billion output with $600 million, and you're going to run it with half the people. Now show us what an incredible operator you are. And that's what puts people on the scoreboards, not budgets, not agreements, not contracts, but pure accountable efficiency.
Wow. Yeah, that's I knew that they were, running it up. Honestly, I learned this from The Office, right? The TV show. Hey, we have a surplus. Okay, let's give it back. No. If we give it back, then they won't increase our budget next year. Okay, let's either buy chairs or a copy machine, and they argue. And then Michael Scott finds out, oh, wait a minute, if I give it back, then I get a portion of that as a bonus. And now you've got all these different incentives to keep that money from corporate. I'm sure the exact same thing is going on there.
It's exactly the way it happens. You don't find production companies that do $1 million productions for a corporate video all of a sudden go back to the business of doing $100,000 production. It's just the way they measure themselves. And unfortunately, it's not measured on productivity. It's measured on activity. If we get back to what Elon and Vivek are supposed to do, we will start awarding these departments for running more efficient. There's nobody better than Elon when he can take that big behemoth of Twitter and he can get rid of 75% of the people and never miss a beat and drive up revenues and become the number one news source in the world. We need to basically drive that ethic home across America. And when you do that, that money will come back in system and productivity. You can pay your people more because you don't have a bloated staff. People will earn more. When they earn more, they will spend more. It all works the same way. But see, the system is about pushing all this money out. Now, why does it happen in government? They're not pushing out employees. They're pushing out politicians at the employee level that are always going to vote to what? Keep their job. And it's the people that do the budgets for them that keep them paid that they're going to vote for. And that's one reason we have bloated government, because it's how they pay for their votes.
Okay. This just perfectly segues into the next thing I wanted to talk about. I've been reading about this new acronym, MEI. We're all familiar with DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now they're saying we need MEI, merit, excellence, and intelligence. If we start applying that to government, school, corporations, small businesses across America, don't you just see America getting great again just by focusing on merit and intelligence and excellence again?
Our country got built on having merits, being innovative, and creating phenomenal things. That is what took us from the newest kid on the block, country-wise, and accelerated us right to the top. Well, the system saw that. Oh my goodness. When you let people thrive and you let people create and you let people grow, great things happen. And look how big this country got. Now, at the heart of it, why America is different, why the United States of America is so different, is we are the only country that allowed its people that if you want to get off your butt, crippled, blind, or crazy, can't even walk one leg, doesn't matter. But if you get out and you find minerals, namely gold, and you're willing to work your butt off for it, it's yours. You know, we're the only country in the world that's done that. And so what really built our country was this phenomenal gold rush, because it didn't matter who you were, where you came from, what color your skin was, what your education was, whether you were obese or fit or an influencer or not. If you got out and dug around in the dirt and you struck it rich, you were entitled to keep those riches. And then the government understood it would thrive too. Now, all of our great countries, Wells Fargo came from that. All kinds of great things came from that as we built our country. That's what fueled it. Now, the rest of the world saw this. One way to bring down the United States of America goes back to that thing that's been in play for decades and decades, almost 100 years, is the Communist Manifesto. And basically what they did is they took our society that awarded people to be creative and to be great and to innovate and to do good things. And in our education system, they got a hold of young minds. And they convinced our young minds that you've got to go to this thing called liberal arts. So we got away from STEM schools, science, technology, engineering, and math. Well, all the other countries went to science, technology, engineering, and math. And we became this society with liberal arts degrees, which means you can be a poet, a journalist, a newscaster, a preacher, etc. You have a liberal arts degree. And what happened is, as it drove down our ability to understand the gifts we have to create, we kind of dumbed down our audience. And it was with that dumbing down of America, not pushing for excellence. Everybody gets a participation trophy, that we lost our edge as a nation. So I tell young people, because I go out and speak on this all the time because of just the ungodly amount of patents and stuff I have. And I said, let me tell you the story. I always ask them, what do you want to be? And nowadays they'll say, I want to be an influencer. I want to be a YouTuber. I want to make a lot of money. And I said, well, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you the story, about Mark Zuckerberg, right? And of course, everybody knows Zuckerberg. I said, let me tell you the story of the Mark Zuckerberg from Venezuela. I bet you didn't know the story of Mark Zuckerberg from Venezuela. And they go, no, I've never heard that one. Tell me. And I say, there isn't one. And that's the story. It's Venezuela. This is the United States of America. If you want to do great things, you're living in the hotbed to do great things. And we are the country, literally, you can still, if you can think it, you can do it. I'm a living example of this. My mother was a heroin addicted crack whore. I was a welfare baby. Here I am. I've done great things. The only difference is I accepted that God gave me a brain to do things, and I'm just going to use it and excel. That's the difference. And that's what they've tried to beat out of us. And that is exactly why we have to go back to teaching kids, pay attention, to be kids. And when I say to be kids, it means we've got to teach them to use their minds, get outside, experience things, create things, break things, take things apart, tinker with it, find out, not sit there staring at a phone, not sit there playing video games that maybe you get some interesting thinking skills, but you don't get doing skills. And I think if we could get back to that, a merit-based program, and that goes all the way down to little league, where we can teach kids, if you work your butt off, you can get there. And if we were to reteach that ethic at all levels, including teachers, I cannot imagine a society that we have today where you can't fire a teacher because none of her students learn and they all fail, but yet you can't fire them. That is one of the ways they undid America. And so, yes, get back to merit, get back to excellence, get back to ingenuity and intelligence, etc., and create that, which, by the way, is created by the time they're 5 years old. If we get back to fostering that, we can get right back on top and do great things again and become the country where all the new innovations came out of, such as the internet and everything else.
Yeah. Good point. Okay. We talked about things that had us nervous on election night. The election is now over, but a couple of things that have me nervous is Republican senators decide to vote John Thune in, who's basically a Mitch McConnell 2.0. And then he puts Mitch McConnell in charge of the Senate rules. He puts Tim Scott in charge of the Republican Senate money. And then he goes on to hire people from Mike Pence's campaign and then Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. All of these people hate Trump. They wanted him gone. So now Trump wins the election, wins the electoral vote, the popular vote, and Republicans in the Senate are now putting hurdles in front of everything he's going to do. Your thoughts on that?
I learned in doing the full forensic audit in Arizona, we have a uniparty. We don't have two parties, period. And as sad as that sounds, it was very heartbreaking for me to realize that. Our whole system is broken and literally needs to be torn down from top to bottom in every single category. For somebody to be in politics and think that they decide for the people what is right, as opposed to doing what the people want done. And that's what's happened here. These people think they're rulers or can think they can make better decisions than us. And then they get into a position like AOC, never made more than $70,000 in a year. Now she's been in there a handful plus of years and she's worth $40 million. How in the hell do you do that? Except the system's corrupt. These are people that are signaling to us that their way of life, what they have, what they want to protect, is more important than what any of us have. They are signaling that they know better for us than we know for our own families. Now, granted, President Trump will not fix this. He can't. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Yes, President Trump got elected. God bless America, America and President Trump that got done. But the ones to fix this, folks, are us. And you've got to clearly understand there is not one person that is going to fix this. That one person is not President Trump. That's the eye opener. The one body that's going to fix it is all of us. And you've got to recognize that you might have loved to hate on Nancy Pelosi or Schumer or some of those idiots, but you also better look at our own party and the Thunes and the McConnells of the world and realize they're no different. And realize we must take responsibility for that. We must get these people out of the government. Yes, President Trump's taking the heat, but he's just one man. But I do believe he is the man to lead this movement where people don't go back into the dumbed down, apathetic state. We are on the cusp here. We are at war. We have awoken to see what's up, but we the people must follow through. And it goes back to that simple thing. We must inspect what we expect, period. And that's in every aspect of our life, from our teachers to our politicians to our preachers.
Okay, lightning round, because we've got some limited time here. Your thoughts on, we're now 18, 19 days out from the election. They're still counting in certain counties and cities, and magically, the longer they count, the more the Democrats win. Your thoughts on that?
That just goes to prove it never was the machines. It's always been a time hack with the bloat of mail-in ballots and early voting. And that's how they do it, folks, period. And that's why we have to pay attention to our election laws. But then you understand they couldn't battle Trump. They knew it. So they're battling down ticket as a uniparty to try to neuter him as fast as they can. Wake up and understand that when you have foreign countries like India, they have 644 million voters and they can count it in a day, we have problems. We need to, once again, when it comes to election, inspect what we expect.
Yeah, 640 million counted in one night, and you got a small county in California that's 18, 19 days out. To me, it just seems like they're just counting until they get the Democrat they want.
They're manufacturing votes under the guise of time, and it takes long. You've got one county out there that's got 10,000 voters, and they're still counting. Can't seem to count it. No, they're trying to figure in a very slow way, wear out the system, get 1 or 2 or 3, 4 extra ballots, because they're basically trying to keep their butts out of jail. And therefore, they can't have too many of the new MAGA era come in.
Yeah, and why would Nancy Pelosi's daughter put out a video? Hey, I'm here in San Francisco curing ballots. Like, the election is over. Why would you be curing ballots 2 weeks later?
Well, that's kind of the narcissistic factor there, but I believe they all communicate that way. When I look at how do they do this to us, and how do sometimes we not find a lot of these communications by freedom of information request, because I think they do it right out over the airways. I think they do it through their buddies, the media. And I think a lot of that is signaling to the other people, keep it up. I'm doing it too. Get out there. Keep doing what you're doing. I think they communicate through the mass airways.
It's very disappointing. I don't know if it will be reviewed and Pam Bondi, puts some people to actually dig into this. I hope so, because we need free and fair elections, but I don't know.
Well, we don't have 1,400 plus days. We don't have 4 years. We've got less than 2. We've got the midterms. And what they're going to do now is they're going to march for those midterms. We basically have less than a year to get this straight, and we got to dive into it fast because we have to fix it for the midterms, because if they get to the midterms with what they've been doing now, flipping seats, they're going to totally neuter it all the way down, and we're going to be lame duck for years.
Okay. Your thoughts on 2 of Trump's picks. He picks Dr. Marty McCary to be the head of the FDA. This guy was against all the COVID information. He said the U.S. government is the biggest spreader of misinformation. Then he picks Fox News medical expert, Dr. Janet Neshawat, as the next Surgeon General. She was spreading disinformation about COVID, masks, double masking, distancing, vaccine safety and efficacy. How could he get one person so right and another person so wrong?
Because the system is still gamed. President Trump's gamed right along this, and you can't do certain things without a certain amount of old school rat bastardism coming with it. It's the way the game's played. He cannot wave a wand and immediately eradicate everything. I do believe he threw some of the nominations out there early because this was the fastest nominations that ever come in, fastest a cabinet has ever been named. I go back and I look at the pattern on this, and I think he's been putting certain things out there to smoke out the bad parties that are still there. So the real person he wants in, he can get in later. So I'm trying to take a little bit of it with a grain of salt, but let's look at three. Let's look at Gates when he announced Gates, and that was a fellow who the system really was coming down hard to get rid of him and couldn't. With that announcement, Trump says, I'm sicking a bulldog on you that's going to get revenge. Then he basically came out with RFK. RFK hates the vaccine. Pharmaceutical industry said that needs to cut back. I think he was saying, hey, guys, you think you're getting this gravy train and we're going to kowtow to medicine and that anymore? It's going away. And then he, with Elon and Vivek, he says, we're cutting out all of the fat and cash. I think those were the three big shots he fired that he meant he was serious. But I do know you have to be able to play the game. Many times they don't honor truth. All the booty kissers come out of the woodwork that will naysay Trump and now are going to be Trump's best friend. None of that's going away. He will have to work through it. But I do believe he's smarter this time around. He's going to be better at picking his people this time around. And he now knows how good and bad the game is played. And he's playing the own version of his game. None of those have disheartened me to any extent that I think we're in any particular trouble at the moment. So far, I'm okay.
Okay. Well, I'll be covering it. I know you'll be covering it. If people want to get your perspective, how can they watch your show?
Find me at Rumble. It's rumble.com/Jovan Hutton Pulitzer. Real easy to remember. Jovan like the 70s cologne, but when I sweat, I swear I do not smell nice. Hutton like E.F. Hutton. You should listen every now and then. And then Pulitzer like the prize. Although I'm not, I'm more like the free parting gift if you hurry up and order now. So Jovan Hutton Pulitzer at Rumble. That's where you'll find me. I broadcast every day, 7 a.m., 7 p.m., 7 days a week. And I have only one goal. I'm going to tell it like it is. I can be very harsh. Sometimes I can be very crude, but my commitment is to you. I'm always going to be truthful and transparent because my goal is to make you the smartest patriot in the room.
Okay. Well, I'm going to put a direct link so that people can find it very easily. Thank you for coming on. I always enjoy having you. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, sir.